Hello all, conformist bongo here. Since everyone else on the internet is weighing in on everything that's happened lately, I guess I need to do my part too and play into the never-ending regurgitation of talking points on social media. But anyway, uh, I actually want to combine the two together because I do think that you're kind of seeing the merger of the kind of discourse with the sort of point about imperialism now kind of has this candy coated sort of almost just invite everyone in. We don't actually care about these sort of territorial borders anymore, and I think you're actually seeing this goalpost move quite a bit in all spheres. Politically, it's a consequence in many regards, I suppose you could say, of the internet and the just its purpose really of the kind of I mean, this is a military invention, if you want to be crude about it, that wanted to kind of subvert the idea of border structure and, of course, the task of mutual destruction. What could you do to kind of realign yourself in that kind of post scenario, doomsday scenario, with something like the internet and information, etc. So, with that in mind, I suppose we could start talking about the kind of demographic takes that everyone had after the census information came out in regards to the white population, hitting its lowest point in American history. And, this is something I've talked about before on the channel, maybe more in a kind of vague sense, but, I've said it before. If you actually, in some degree, accept your life and actually who you are as a person. I know this sounds kind of cliche, but regardless of perhaps your own critiques, the idea that you just think you can, start this sort of LARPy revolution to, overcome your own community or just try to, obscure yourself and stand, from the outside of it, which of course, ideology is very useful for that kind of worldview to be able to sustain it. Um, and I think that would be my first real message in this sort of, analysis of the demographics here is, the actual intentions within those people. And, there is a couple of, ways to go about, taking away from that. And that, I think a lot of, whites, and certainly, from my own personal experience, I've been, posting about demographics for years on my, personal accounts and whatnot. Whites are usually, the, the the biggest critique of this kind of stuff by far. But I guess to get back to draw back to the point is if you really love your life, then the idea that you would just sit by and watch it change, even if even if this was like the ultimate lib soy jack fantasy of GDP growth and these become fully assimilated citizens, it still doesn't really answer the question of why it's really necessary to invite the world in to begin with, when there's so many not just problems within our own nation, but resource allocation, etc. It's kind of funny how you do have this sort of imperial narrative, or its sort of form in this kind of more and more explicit way. I would think, you see these pundits on Twitter. They almost seamlessly go from this Afghanistan commentary to we should let let in as many refugees as possible. It was just like clockwork, right? And I think that also goes into you know the geopolitical reality of our military at large, which is that you've alienated the good old boys. There's no good old boys left. And if you're not familiar with what I mean by that, that is your sort of archetype of the Trump voter that you have in media of America, who was proud of their grandparents' survival and interference and or intervening in World War II. That sort of Americanized version of us coming in and swooping in and saving the day. You could say that that's mythical, of course, but ultimately that still resonated upon the population. There was still this kind of profound proudness, that kind of Evolian sort of callback, if you will, to the sort of metaphysic tradition of the warrior going off to war. Even if the purposes are corrupt in itself, it has its own sort of metaphysical capacity, and much moreover the sort of traditions within these sort of warrior cultures clashing actually is what ultimately funnels in to our culture as a whole. And so I've been an advocate for the teaching of these sort of Western tradition, Western theory, not just because I think it's good for white America, but of course for my own interest as a not so white guy, that I think that many minorities, if they were actually given a proper education of the West, they would feel far less alien. I would say that the way we're going about business, if you will, is the worst way possible, because democracy asserts itself in this sort of conflict of social interest, and trying to assert into it to use the sovereign of the state and its exceptions, and constantly funneling into crisis that left-wing journalists and activists are willing to constantly tout on social media, constantly to kind of reassert this covert power. And really just the sort of, I've talked about this before, the kind of control of a nation through the kind of cafeteria ordainment of just the idea of property ownership, right? Property ownership used to be distributed not necessarily just on if you had the price for it. There was usually there was kind of this sort of connection of inheritance, of passing down, or you've kind of were willing to deal a house to someone who had a sort of reputation within your community that just to literally cement the deal, you would have to be very trusting of someone with that kind of money and responsibility. But as time goes on, we see that's a foreign concept now today, with the kind of commercial ownership and the kind of cafeteria distribution of it, and where people are headed. And again, you're kind of seeing what I actually suggested months ago on this channel, but it's something that I would assert to my friends and family prior, which of course is to get out of the fucking cities. The elites hate you, and I think that kind of goes into the engine of this kind of social hatred that I think the left are far better at controlling. Well, maybe not controlling in a dignified sense of the self, in a sort of ethical way, I would say no, but controlling and the sort of using, the engine of hatred in and of itself, and this kind of ideologues, these sort of scapegoats, the ontology of their own truth with, in regards to these scapegoats that they form through, usually social media nowadays. But nonetheless, they're far better at using it, I think, than we are, and it's important to realize that, because I find so often that, especially in day-to-day life, less so on the internet. I think, obviously a bunch of guys posting on the internet's probably gonna be more warmed up to this kind of stuff, but I think you have to realize that the people, the kind of demagogues out in California, Silicon Valley, they have a desire to actually rule and own over places like Texas and Kansas and Oklahoma and places like that. They might look down on them. Well, of course they do. But ultimately, they do want the satisfaction of actually feeling like they truly own those places. And, you can't say that's the same for, the Nebraska steel worker who, just wants to go to work and, have his children and kind of live the hyper-modern, peasant life, which is ultimately, what we actually are. And I think that's, important to realize is, we are these glorified, hyper-extended serfs now. We are not on the road to serfdom. We are the serf, and so realizing that your placement is kind of in that kind of eternal peasant lifestyle that people like Spangler talked about, but ultimately there is a kind of white pill within that. This is how you set the kind of minoritarian attitude that people like Kenneth Brown, for example. I'm always kind of plugging his channel because I actually think he's really interesting. But he talks about the minoritarian kind of aspect, and I would actually say that that's actually eroding within minorities in the United States. I've talked about this in other videos where if you're going to quote unquote, take away these sort of gatekeep structures, you're actually ruining, well, not ruining, but tempering that sort of need of being, truly an innovator in your art, because that was really the way that, minorities in America before we really got to the top, right? They were always very, very proficient and kind of useful in that sort of utilitarian American way of looking at things. What can you actually do? What can you offer to society? Can you make money doing something? And the kind of meritocracy that we used to believe in, quite literally. That's actually going to get eroded away if we take these sort of logical ends to smashing the white institutions and whatnot. You're probably actually eroding away a lot of creative juice, if you will. And so I think in some regards, this is a conversation that I can't even really have with anyone, because there's not many people who are perhaps willing to look at this kind of perspective of things. Everyone's kind of either, let's just not, adapt or try to, convert underneath these sort of narratives in and of themselves. And I did that a few times in some of these critical thinkers that people use as examples. I think the idea that every sort of racial sort of interaction, I suppose, in this kind of multicultural world, we can't just like overanalyze every single particular interaction and look for these sort of ulterior motives over and over again. It's just not sustainable, and it doesn't seem like we're going to be able to have our voice heard on any sort of reforms that we've wanted, would be my sort of take. So what do you do about that is, well, you have to look within ourselves and realize that, a lot of us aren't really prepared for that kind of lifestyle, to be quite frank. We sort of had it good for a while. If you want to be serious about it and kind of analyze it from the kind of middle class decadence that's pretty much undermined white America now, to the point where you have just this overcome drug culture and habits of diabetes and heroin use and this sort of nihilistic attitude that ultimately, I think, makes up these sort of political struggles, these sort of willingness to just lay over and really let this sort of nihilistic, willingness to even, there's a lot of people, right, that I know, will see and have, complex relationships with, right, that, you would think that they would be, right alongside me in my analysis, but they're going to totally tote the line and say that I'm a heretic and totally disagree with me, but the reality is that these people don't like you. They truly despise you, and you have to really deal with that. Whether it's in this kind of passive aggressive tweet way is just a mere extension of possibilities that are way worse on the horizon. And it already did happen. I mean, we can pretend like it didn't, but it did last summer. I was actually very shocked by the extent that it hit in particular communities, even within my own. That is a sign of the times, as it were, and I think it's important to consider that. And like I said, I don't really think that you're going to be able to find that just by flipping a couple of elections. We have to get real about adapting the sort of lifestyle that it'll take to actually move forward and getting rid of a lot of copes. And this isn't to say to just give up and just roll over and let things roll over on you in the kind of extreme stoic attitude, right? But I do think that it is important to have a sort of realism about it. And that would be my kind of advice, really, in this sort of ramble video going forward. And, I guess just to reiterate, this sort of, clown state of authority that, almost everyone agrees on now. You really can't find too many people toting the line that's not getting a check right now. I really believe that. This last couple days has really, eaten away at the so-called perceived mandate going on right now in our country. But so I think as we go forward with realizing that this mandate really isn't real, and if it was, it's gone now. It's kind of interesting to see where the vacuum of competence leads, because ultimately people are just really looking for the sort of direction necessary to actually pick up steam towards trying to actually live the sort of intentionality that they want for themselves. It's important to really point out that when you have these sort of elites literally antagonizing you all day, that there's a lot of lost potential out there because, if these people are not getting a chance to really flourish in that sort of philosophical tradition of what that entails, kind of the Aristotelian sense, then there is a lot of potential out there in the world that is just waiting for people to have their kind of chance and be told that they can do something, or at least have the sort of resources and really just will overall. And that's why I think that philosophy and the philosophy of being is so important, because that is how we're actually going to be able to try to structure the political. Would be my capper for this video. But yeah, thanks for watching. This is another ramble one. I promise that Francis Bacon video is coming out in a couple days. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching.